All around me, the world was normal, people eating dinner or walking down the street. But my world? Some massive invisible hand kept capturing me, then tossing me into the air, and I'd somersault and fall and be caught and placed upright again, right on the ground. All night it went on like this. I'd be walking, and then I'd be flying, and then I'd be falling, and then I'd be caught until finally, by morning, I couldn't say that it wasn't disconcerting, but I could say I'd become more fluent in this strange upheaval. I could say I had begun to trust the same hand that tossed me would catch me. I could say that when I woke up, I was still myself, and yet nothing felt the same. And though my feet never left the ground today, I was tossed, and then I was caught. And even now, I almost feel them around my chest, those great fingers, as they set me on my feet again. This poem by Rosemary Watola Tromer captures for me beautifully the paradox that we are living through right now. The world tossing us with dystopia and fantastic lies, proclaimed as truth, leaving us with a serious case of existential vertigo. Can you hear me? And yet again, here we are again with pulsating energy like last Sunday and the Sunday before that, and a long stream of Sundays here at MLUC, the room full of energy and kids and beloved elders and everyone in between clapping and rocking with what? Could I go so far as to call it joy? Perhaps joy in spite of everything. Today, we have MLUC's new house band, right? How about another round of applause for that? Although, beloveds, it's a slippery slope here. Big screens, house bands. What's next? A church bus? Or potlucks with green jello, complete with little marshmallows on the inside? Anybody know what I'm talking about, or is that a Midwestern thing? Well, not the jello. A little more taste than the jello. But when I told you that if this administration came to power, we'd be more religious, this is it. More religious, right? And here's the better news. It's not just us. Oh no. Across the country, religion, all kinds of religions, and all those who are seeking some spiritual meaning and practice are making a huge comeback. Why? Not so much that we're in another great awakening, slayed by the Holy Spirit, as my Pentecostal friends would say. No, we need to trust in one another because we need to find joy in this present madness. Can you hear me? When I was in California a few weeks ago at the large church conference, I went out early for a cup of coffee. Now, the large church conference was in Rancho Palos Verdes, which is the neighborhood I lived in. Francis and I lived there for 10 years, served the church there. My barista name, you should all know, just in case you're curious, is not John. There's way too many Johns in the world. I call myself Theo. Thelonious for short, or long. I always wanted to be called Theo, God for the Greek word for God, although not so much for ego purposes, but because my life is largely defined by the spirituality I live in and the practice that Francis and I try to teach. And so while my middle initial is T, which stands for my robber baron great-grandfather, John Thompson, not something I'm particularly proud of, I pretend the T stands for Thelonious, or Theo for short. As I was waiting for my coffee, the barista called out Theo, and the person in line with me commented on the name, Theo. Is that short for Theodore or Thelonious? I was already intrigued because he had Thelonious in his mind, so I said, Thelonious, I said. He said, like the great Thelonious Monk. I said, yeah. I already like this guy. He likes jazz, too. And we proceeded to talk about Monk and jazz, and somehow, I don't know, somehow the conversation drifted to what I did for a living. And you all know I hate to tell people what I do for a living, because I usually get two kinds of answers. The most frequent is a confession. I'm sorry, I haven't been to church in quite a while. To which I usually say, you are forgiven, and make the sign of the chalice around them. Or sometimes I get the longer explanation about how God saved them and how they've turned their life over to Christ, and to that I say very little. And the third response I get occasionally is, I don't believe in God. To which I often say, I probably don't believe in your God either. But this time my interlocutor said something else. He said, I'm glad you're here. We need religious communities, I think. We need them now more than ever. And then he went on to say, note the confession part, I just lost my job. I was a contractor for the federal government. We really don't know what we're going to do. We just bought a house. It's also crazy. It's also mean-spirited. We are not parasites. We were doing real work in the world, helping people. This is all so crazy. At this point, we sat down. I asked him if he had any kind of a community that he was a part of, because being in a community is what we need right now for the strength for the days ahead before us. And he said, well, my kids play soccer, so we're parents of sort of a community. But he said it's not the same. So we talked about what he believed about his purpose in life, whether he believed in some sort of higher power or meaning. He said he doesn't really believe in God, but he believed in a force. He said, like Star Wars. I said, yeah, like Star Wars. I suggested that his family and he try a few congregations. And I added quickly, said, I'm not really evangelizing here, listen, but what is happening is far more powerful than any of us can handle alone. And we need to be together to practice compassion and bring a small light of joy into our world. And since this was the same neighborhood that I had once ministered to 10 years ago, I knew the congregations in the neighborhood. And I suggested a few, including, of course, our UU congregation down the corner. Now more than ever, beloveds, we need one another. We need this community. But I'd like to hear from you about what we need now more than ever. And so we're going to do that thing that I do. I want you to give it a whirl. Even if you don't feel like it, turn to your neighbor or neighbors. And the question I'd like you to answer in a few minutes is, what do we need now more than ever? So let's just give that a spin and see what happens. Such a quiet, introverted bunch of folks. Let's hear from a few of you. We've got some ushers with some mics. Let's just raise your hand, and an usher will bring the mic to you. What do we need now more than ever? Over here, Gary.
Hi, I'm Kathy. Well, Eileen and I talked a lot about hope, that we're feeling like I need more of that because I'm losing my own. And I guess what would help me is to know that there are 1 billion people out there who also care enough to do a little bit to help somehow, because I certainly will.
Thank you.
We talked about courage, kindness, And more wine.
More wine, yeah.
I think we need more love and family members to come into our hearts more and be togetherness. And as a congregation, have more family come here, like my mother. I've been trying to get her to come here, and it's been a while. And so I'd like her to start coming with me. And I think I need encouragement from the other people in the congregation to get people to come together, and family is most important.
Amen. Thank you. Others?
I believe that what we need is a plan. I think we need to start to organize, and we need to get active. Thank you.
And then one more, Nuala, let's take you.
We spoke about action being the antidote to despair. So all signed Pat's postcards today.
Thank you. I do appreciate those responses, and it goes to show, I think, about how much there is among us that can help us find ways to move forward through this. If you were brand new this week and had no idea what we just did, welcome. We're glad you're with us. David Brooks, just last week, speaking to a group in the UK, said that we're in a time of rupture and repair. He was very blunt. He said the rupture is the result of elitism that has alienated and harmed so many that now we're seeing the worst of the elites destroy our moral and institutional fabric. But we've been here before. Maybe not in our lifetimes, but in lifetimes past. Perhaps we are, as Paul Tillich once said, lying in the basement of our souls, only to break through to a new basement below that. What is going to save us, I think, is doing this right here, and a lot more, of course. Being here, friends, is not a distraction. It's a rebirth. We're holding the light of the moral order, the compass, as Bob was talking about. We're holding a flame, a small flame, that is flickering in the wind, but I do believe will start a fire. And now more than ever, we need one another. We need communities like this one, the one we're in right here, right now. We need to hold on to each other. Our spiritual theme for the month of March is trust. I will admit that when I sat down to write this sermon on Thursday, I stared at that screen for 30 minutes. What in the world could I possibly say that would be at all helpful in a world that seems so shattered, especially around the theme of trust? But trust, friends, is what holds us together. And there's more of it than you might think. As we heard in the readings this morning, there's trust that people will still conduct commerce. There's trust that, for the most part, loved ones will be safe, and that there's justice and truth, and it eventually will prevail. And one of the reasons we come to a community like this one and the others that are out there, and I urge you to go to communities and bring your families, because now is the time. We do this to prime the pump for all the thirsty people out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat what's happening, but neither do I want it to debilitate us. Because when we trust each other and we trust those who feel the same way we do, we will find a way forward. I guarantee it, we will. A Harvard professor, Francis Frey, once said that trust requires 3 qualities. The first is authenticity. To trust someone or something, they need to know you're authentic. You all know, right? You've all been with a salesperson that seems a little too slick. Not quite there. One of the things I love about this congregation is that you are authentic. Oh, you are authentic. You are full of possibilities, full of opinions, full of mistakes. I among you. And in this whole bunch of humanity, from fidgety kids to a few off-key voices, do we have problems? You bet we have problems. Every community has problems. But I often say we're the most fun you can have and still be called a religion. The second quality to trust is reasonableness. Does it make any sense at all? When people ask me what you use, believe, I tell them, we believe a lot of things. Some of us will call that thing a god or give it some name, but most don't. Most of us, I said, are still searching. We're searching for a faith greater than ourselves, something that makes sense. We're not dogmatic, and I hope we're at least reasonable in how we approach that. Because we believe in such reasonable things as human dignity, even when people do awful things. We believe in equity, even where we're not good at practicing it. We believe in compassion for others and for ourselves, even when we falter. We believe in freedom, and most of all, we believe in love. Love is at the center of our faith. Love is really what matters. And when someone is not kind, when we run into someone who is coming to our church with less than kind things to say, I usually these days just say, there's enough meanness to go around. Let's not go there. Most of all, friends, we believe in each other despite our imperfections, perhaps because of those imperfections. And the final quality is empathy. In order to find trust at the center of our faith, we must be able to empathize with others. We must know how it feels, or at least approach it. That is why the candles of community are so important. We hold you in our hearts. Today we are launching the annual operating fund, which is also known as the pledge drive. And as in all sermons on the amount, I need to take a minute to explain what that's about, because many of us don't have any idea how our finances work. First of all, really, there's not a lot of mystery here. We don't get any money from the outside denomination. We are entirely self-funded. And beyond these walls and those within here, we are part of a larger community, and this community, this congregation that we have, needs to raise about $1 million a year to run this place. That's what it takes. For the salaries of our amazing staff, for the outreach we're doing, for the upkeep of this gorgeous building. Now, we get some money, quite a bit of money from rent, and we get some money from fundraisers. We give most of our plate away, so that's not really a big source of money for us. So it leaves about $750,000 we have to raise among ourselves. So no matter who you are, member, visitor, friend, we are asking for your help, because we can't do this without you. The pledge is the amount of money we're asking you to think about for the coming year, not counting the special fundraisers and what you put in the basket. And our fiscal year is not the same as the calendar year. It runs from July 1st to June 30th. So we're asking for this fairly early, and I often hear about this. Why do you need to know this in March? We need to know it because we can't build a budget without knowing what that number is. Now, I realize projecting how much money you think you might be able to give over a year is tricky business, especially as uncertain as things are now. Your pledge is your best hope, your aspiration as to what you'll be able to give, and of course, if circumstances change, you can lower your pledge. You can also raise your pledge. And in fact, if you're having trouble making the pledge or in any other way, please reach out. We have resources. The pledge is what we hope to do, and honestly, it should feel a little bit like a stretch. If you can't imagine a whole year, try thinking of it monthly. Now, how much should you pledge? This varies immensely by who you are, by what you have, by how involved you are. When I was serving a church, the church in California, I had a film producer who came up to me one Sunday and she said, "You know, Reverend, in figuring out how much to pledge, I figured you're as good as a good movie." So I based my pledge on what I would pay for a good movie once a week, which in California at that time was $15, $20. "Nice," I said. Actually, I don't remember what I said, but it probably wasn't nice. Moviegoers, of course, are in the millions, and we're not. But beyond that, it's not entertainment. I mean, you may come here and feel entertained. I mean, with a band like this, how can you lose? But that's not what we're here for. We're here to build community. We're here to build something more. So as you're thinking about what to give, think about what this place means. Now, we don't tithe, which those of you who come from other backgrounds may have heard is giving 10% of your income, although that would be nice. Although that would be nice, we usually think in the range, and it's a broad range, from 1% to 5% of your income. You figure it out. I know people who give much more than that. They've been here for a long time. They know this place is the center of their lives. It's the rock on which they live. Some folks start smaller and they work their way up. You get to decide. But more than anything else, and this is the important piece, more than anything else, we're shooting for 100% participation. I really mean that. I want everyone to make a pledge for next year. This is the year, if you haven't got that already. Got to prime the pump. Got to prime the pump because there's thirsty souls out there. I'd also like to welcome any of you who would like to become formal members of our congregation, and you can do that by seeing someone at the welcome table. After the service today and after the service for the next 3 Sundays in March, we're having a program called Starting Point. We have openings, we have lunch, we have childcare, 11:30 in the McGinnis room. Just drop in, we'd love to have you. David Brooks, that New York Times columnist that I spoke about, told the group that the elite have rigged society and now it seems to be falling apart. That's not a radical statement. That's happening in real time. Brooks said the answer from good-meaning people was to let your lives speak, borrowing something from the great Quaker Matthew Fox. Let your lives speak. Live with virtue that lies in your heart, he said. Practice soulcraft. Be together in a small group, because he said when a small group of people find a better way to love, when we relate to each other by opening up our best selves and trusting one another in a way to live, something happens and others copy it. Culture changes, he said, when we relate to each other with an attentive and generous gaze. As I recalled my meeting in the coffee shop, I wish I could have imparted some hope to the man who lost his job. There is another possibility, friends, and I think you're sitting in it right now. We commit to one another to feed that small flame and feed the fire of the souls, to make it ablaze so that others can carry on. Because we are needed now more than ever. The beating heart of who we are. As we heard in the anthem by Leonard Cohen, every heart to love will come, but like a refugee, ring the bells that can still ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in.